Aisha, and I'm a former host of Mocha Single Mothers by Choice, or SMCs. Like you, as an SMC, I decided to become a mother knowing I'd be the sole care provider and parent for my children, at least at the outset. The Mocha stood for Black, so I'm using the word Black, and I'll be discussing being a single mother by choice from a Black woman's lens. You'll connect with all the interesting and fun things about this non-traditional path, like discussing which sperm to use and some hard truths about fertility and the realities of dating as a single mother who doesn't have a co-parent to rely on occasionally, and what it's actually like to parent as an SMC. This is the Black Single Mothers by Choice podcast. What are your thoughts to using 23andMe and specifically using it to find the donor? I have so many thoughts. I'm one of those people who I don't open up Pandora's box, right? So I signed an agreement that I would wait until my child was 18. That's one part of my thought process. The other part of my thought process is that I don't want my children's DNA identifying information, their private information out there. And so I consider their DNA to be private information. And so I think that if it's something that they put out there, it is something that they put out there when they reach an age of understanding what the implications could be. And so at 3 and 8, they're not there yet. So I personally am not going to do that. Putting my own DNA out there would be a decision I feel equipped to make. Putting theirs out there, I'm not at this point. All right. Next question. What's your approach to telling your child their conception story? I ascribe to tell them early, tell them often. Since I have egg donor and sperm donor as part of my conception story, the way that I've approached it is that there are 3 things that are required to make a baby. There are 4 things. There's the uterus, there's the egg, there's the sperm, and then there's love, right? And so that keeps the story inclusive. That keeps the story something that won't be changing anytime in the future for us. And I've started similar to you before they were able to talk as a means of getting my head in the game and getting me comfortable with the story so that it rolls off my tongue. We do have the donor profiles. And so when they reach an age where they want to see that and they're able to process that information, I have it at the ready. And as of now, I've started telling my 3-year-old, because we have a nighttime routine where we just snuggle and then we talk about our days. And then so I'm interweaving our story into that time so that it is private, it is personal, it's dark, so she's not looking directly at me, and it's something that she just grows up with. So that's my approach. So what do you call the donor? I call the donor. I think the waters get muddied quite a bit because in a dating situation, I told a man that I used the donor and he was like, is it just the dad and y'all broke up badly and you're calling him a donor? No. So I've started now using more precise language, a donor from a sperm bank, so that they clearly understand the context of. Okay, so this one comes up a lot. And I love the fact that we have been able to grow with our children and parenting in this community because we are dead smack in the middle of a lot of these questions. So when did you start, or when should you start seeking out donor siblings? In the SMC spaces, we see a range of emotions around this topic, and people will evolve. You get it from people that are just like, no, I didn't come to this path to choose extra family members, all the way to I'm all the way out there and open. Let's find the people. I think I have evolved on this topic, and I think you do it in the best interest of the kid, regardless of how fearful you are. I'm nervous about the unknown, and that is the unknown of the kids as well, because people are raised in different environments. I'm also a bit leery because there are non-Black people, non-people of color also using donors, and I don't want to be that token in your life of access to Blackness or what have you, but that's a totally different topic. So for me, I did not seek out donor for my first child. I allowed myself to process what it could possibly mean. And so I started when my eldest was about 18 months. And then that's when I was just like, okay, I feel ready. Things have settled and let's go ahead and now do this. So I signed up with the sperm bank, sibling registry. And then I found a wonderful donor sibling mom, and it has just evolved. Now, I will say that I am also the type of person that just because the floodgates have opened doesn't mean that I need to have a relationship with everybody. Now, I have a relationship with two families, and I'm good right now. And so the kids have grown up together. They are aware of each other. We've done family vacations together. And that has been a real deep joy for me. But I'm going at my pace. So I think as long as you do it, do something so that the kids, you soften the entry for your kids so that they do know that this world exists, that these donor siblings exist, and that you've made connections with a few families. The rest, the kids will take up the mantle and they will own their relationships. But I needed to do my part to begin the conversation, to open the gates, to let them know that my child exists and is part of this. It's a very special relationship. We're entering into a different place in our society, and it is a privilege to be part of another child's ecosystem, another child's life. Like, I adore the little boy. Like, he's scrappy. Like, two donor sibling boys. My daughter is so far the only daughter and the oldest. And so it is quite a joy to watch them interact, but to also be a trusted adult in the lives of the little boys as well. So yeah, so there is that. How do they refer to each other? Because I refer to when we got together most recently, I told my daughter, we're going to see your donor sibling. She's like, yeah, but I like to call them my donor friend. And it's just okay.
How do you grapple with the idea or concept of children being angry about not having a social father?
So this is a good question. There have been only really 2 times this has come up, and it wasn't in the context of anger. Right around preschool, the kids start noticing mommies and daddies coming to school to pick up. So my 3-year-old is mommies and daddies, and then we do the finger family, and my daughter knows that our finger family is a mom and a sister. And so that's her concept right now. So there's no real emotion there, no feeling of disappointment. My older daughter, she'll bring it up sporadically. Oh, so and so had their mom and their dad. So right now, there's no anger, but I do realize that emotions evolve as people become more concrete on what's going on in the world. And so I'm just flexible to be open to hear her feelings on the topic because she's going to go through puberty and have a range of emotions. And so I'm just remaining flexible, but trying right now to create an environment and space for her to feel comfortable expressing strong emotions and to be able to have tools to talk them through. So that's what I'm doing for right now. But in terms of, I think people have a right to feel however they're going to feel. And then we process those emotions because reality is not going to change. Yeah. Let's switch to the parenting topic. So we get this a lot. We get a lot of new parents in our group and we watch and we just want to virtually hug them because it's just, oh my. Okay, so let's start from the very beginning. I'm newly pregnant and not yet showing at work. What do I tell people if or when they ask about the father? I did not get that question. And I don't know if it's because majority of my team was remote. I was also transitioning in between offices. So I did not get that question. I was more so the one that's just, I'm expecting my maternity leave will start XYZ and just keep it moving. And then everything else, I talk about my kids throughout work. I am open with being a single parent. I never really had that. People were genuinely happy for me. So I didn't get any awkward questions. I think I may have said once or twice that I'm a single mother by choice and just leave it out there for people to Google. When I say I'm open, I don't really care about people's opinions. I don't care about all of that stuff. I'm here, I'm pregnant, period, end of story. There's a way you answer that question that just shuts it down. If you lead with, I'm expecting my maternity leave starts XYZ, it doesn't leave room for people to ask those awkward questions because how do you go back and say, wait, who's the father? Well, it makes it awkward for them. Right. I think it's implicit in how you respond. You shut it down. You don't leave too many gaps in the conversation. Oh, yes. I'm so excited to let you all know that I'm expecting my maternity leave will start, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I'm just excited. And then we move on. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of space for them to ask awkward questions because the moment to ask awkward questions would be, I'm expecting. Don't pause. Yeah, and then when they throw meetings on your calendar, they're like, "Does this date work for everybody?" It's just like, "Yeah, no, I have the kids. I'm a single parent, so that's not going to work for me." So it is all in the cadence of the conversation. You state the fact, that's not going to work for me. Find other options. And so I think there can't be any trepidation, there can't be any hesitancy, because then people look at that as an opportunity to jump in with their nuisance questions.
So I have been seeing this question a lot, and maybe it's due to the pandemic. It's, can I work from home with my newborn?
You can't do both. And I think, as when I was a manager, we had this conversation at work. It's that when you are working, your company expects you to have 100% focused attention on your work. And you cannot split that attention. So that's the assumption with working from home. The assumption is that you're focused on your job. Children, little people, don't necessarily respect boundaries. And so, depending on the nature of your job, you may or may not be able to flex your hours and things like that. But I know for the jobs that I work, I have deadlines, I have specific meeting times, and trying to weave childcare in between that. I did it in the pandemic and it nearly killed me. Most companies will expect you to have childcare. If you are working a standard 9 to 5 day, they will expect you to have childcare. So if there's children noise in the meetings, it reflects poorly and it could be a performance issue. So I would be really hesitant to do that. So that would be my response.
This question comes up often. Should I move her closer to family?
I actually moved not necessarily to be closer to family. I moved to be closer to an SMC community, an active and diverse SMC community. So I moved from Pennsylvania to the DMV area for work and for the SMC community. So I would say do your assessment and decide your whys for moving, and make sure that you are being realistic about what this move could entail, and then try to do it in a way that has the least amount of regret. So if you're moving for family, make sure you know who the family is that you're moving for, right? Really know them. If you're moving for community, make sure that you understand what the potential of that community is. Like, I dibbled and dabbled in the SMC community here in the DMV, so I was aware of what they were and the cultural aspects in the area. So for me, it was a good move. I moved toward a village and community, not necessarily family. Culture and being in a Black progressive environment was important for me. I would weather almost any storm to make sure that my girls grew up as free Black girls. And so for me, it was important where I lived as well. Another aspect to moving to be with family is sometimes, who do I turn to if something goes wrong? So if I get sick, you get sick, the kids get sick, and I'm immobile, what does my village look like? How deep is my village in order to pull and leverage that support in that way? And so this year we had COVID, the house went down. And I think that might have been the first time, because COVID had been in the past such a catastrophic event, it got you to thinking, what will I do? So I had two instances of having to leverage my village. When I got COVID, I was the only person in my house who got COVID. So the kids did not get it. And so I was sick, but it was like the flu. So I was out of it for 2 days. So the way my village came through for me was they sent me Uber Eats gift cards so that I didn't have to worry about cooking for the family. So that was with COVID. We recovered, what have you. I did have an instance where I unexpectedly had to take my toddler to the hospital. And so that was scary because it happens in an instant. You're not really prepared for it. So I went to the doctor. Her blood oxygen level had dropped really low. They were like, you need to go to the emergency room now. And so I had to call my sister, who is part of my village. And she's the part of my village that is, my expectation is that she drops everything. And because of the nature, it's drop everything. I need you to get my car. I need you to come get my oldest child. We'll meet you at the emergency room. Here's where I'm going to be. And so I think you need those people in your family as well. That is just the drop everything. I'm going to heap all of this on you and expect you to handle it type of people. And so we ended up going in the ambulance to an emergency room. My oldest could not stay there, but they let her stay in the room until my sister came and got her. And then my sister had to go and then go get my car. So that meant that she needed a second driver. And so there are levels to the support of a village that you need. You need people who are just like, I just need you to pick up my kid because I've got a late meeting, right? I've had an accident. My car is undrivable. Can you come get us all? We're okay. I need you to drop everything. Come get these kids because I can't, I'm incapacitated. Right. And so I think when you think about putting together a village and you think about moving for family, you need to absolutely know who it is in your family and what role they're going to play. So I don't leverage my sister every day, but probably like once or twice a year, I need her to call in and do some heavy lifting. All right. Last two things, leverage your SMC community because we get it. Right. And we will also recognize when an emergency is an emergency and mama needs to eat. And then secondly, leverage, I know some people are not out with their SMC status. I was out, so my daycare knew my situation. So when I had to go deliver my second child and I had returned home and had my oldest with me, I had to leverage my daycare to find a parent who could come and get my child and take her to school at least for a week to give me a buffer. And so sometimes you have to ask your larger community and put out there, here's what the need is. Okay. All right. So how do I go about getting a sitter when I'm cautious about who I leave my child with? Yes, I would say care apps have come a long way. They do a lot of the heavy lifting, they do background checks. And so I would say leverage those, but still do your due diligence, right? Meet with the people, talk with the people before you bring the person into the house. Now, I was an SMC who was just like, I'm going to be that person who I'm going to get childcare and I'm going to do it on a monthly basis. And the reality of that is that the kids are so young and they're so innocent and vulnerable that you just have to wait until you're comfortable doing it. And I will say for me, I didn't feel comfortable until the kids became verbal. So around 3 is when I felt comfortable. But now I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so I feel like I'm more confident that the 8-year-old can give direction, has intuition to know when things feel wrong or feel unsafe or what have you. And so for me, I do my due diligence and then I throw a bit of caution. I pray before I leave. I meet the person. And so I'm a little bit more comfortable now with the 8 and 3-year-old, leaving them with a sitter and they're together. I think I really struggled when I had one kid because that one-to-one, a kid to adult relationship didn't sit well with me for some reason because I felt like that's my relationship. But now that it's 2-on-1, they play with each other and interact with each other more. So the sitter is just there, like watching and guiding activities. And my thing would be do your due diligence. If you're lucky enough to tap into or a nanny network, the groundwork has been laid. They know the routine. They've worked with small kids before, but do your due diligence and do it when you feel comfortable. And just save up that money until you feel comfortable. If you're like me, I'm going to get a sitter, just save that money until you feel comfortable. But for me, my comfort came when my kids became verbal. Also, leverage your SMC community because if you have SMC friends that you trust, they would have already vetted their care provider. And so you could also say, does anybody have a recommendation for a babysitter? And so that way you're just paying the babysitter rate and you're not necessarily paying the rate for the application as well. So another, I guess, category of questions that come up during the preparing stages, and we are smack dab in about a whole cohort of babies about to be born. So moms are getting ready to set up wills and guardianships, right? So what type of estate planning should I do and when? So I will start. So I know I was on the fence about when to start doing my estate planning, but it was important to me that before I went into delivery with my oldest child, that I had something in place. So I started with one of the internet law firms and I created a quick will and set up guardianship before I delivered my first. And then life got crazy. And I'd say around the time my oldest was 5, I sought out a law firm to make sure that I had an ironclad estate plan, guardianship, a trust set up, and a medical power of attorney set up. God forbid something happened to me. I wanted to make sure that I had ironclad legal documents in place for my kids. Yeah. And so just to set the context here, you're going to get probably like a packet of information, documents, and forms to fill out. So it's not going to be something that you sit down and you do in one setting, because you're going to have to go find documents, you're going to have to find account numbers, you're going to have to talk to people, have these conversations. And I know for me, part of my guardianship plan was I need to start getting my kids with this person and starting to be proactive about building that relationship as well. And so that was important to me. But I do also understand the anxiety that people will have when they're pregnant or have an infant and filling out these guardianship forms, because no one wants to think about their demise, especially as an SMC. You're the only parent that this child has. Now, also attached to that, part of my estate planning is also making sure that I maintain my own physical health. So that means staying on top of my health maintenance appointments, dentists, physicals, gynae appointments, and things like that, mammograms, right? Because early intervention is going to be really important for any one of those scenarios. So it's multi-tiered, multi-layered, but don't be afraid to have the tough conversations, because we're planning people. So planning is going to play a big part in making sure that your children's future are secured, whether you're here or not.
Next question, how do I know I'm financially ready to become an SMC, and how much savings do I need to have?
It is expensive. And I think that raising kids are expensive in general. So I think you want to go into it with that mindset. For me, I try to be fiscally conservative. So I do think long and hard before I make purchases. I do try to make sure that I've got my finances in order. So I've got college funds set up. I've got my own 401k. So I want to be making sure that I'm securing my financial future as well as theirs. And I also came to being an SMC at a midpoint in my career. So I was established and I wasn't worried about jumping from job to job. So I knew that the devil I knew is the devil I knew, right? So I was okay staying at my job. But for me, whether or not I was financially ready just depended on how stable I was in my life in terms of all of the things financial. It's hard to anticipate how much money you're going to need, because it depends on what kind of lifestyle you want. So you have SMCs that are not making a whole lot of money, but still living the life that they want. And then you have other SMCs on the other spectrum who are high earner SMCs. Both comes with pros and cons and things of that nature. But I say you have to be comfortable with where you are financially, have a plan for how you're going to maintain lifestyle, and have a plan B in case things unexpected that happen. So have a rainy day fund. And I would say it's probably a really good thing to be a part of an SMC community as you're starting to think, because then if you're on the younger end of the spectrum, it gives you enough time to make those shifts, to even know to assess your work schedule and your work environment and decide for yourself if you need to make a change sooner rather than later. Okay, so one other question that we think is really important and comes up in our space a lot is that as an SMC, you fill out a lot of official paperwork for your children: passports, school documentation, hospital records, birth certificates. What do you fill in for the second parent? Yeah, I pretty much do NA. And I think an important point to put on this one is that your birth certificate should match, like everything should be consistent. And you'll typically run into this sometimes with people who say they use a known donor, but they actually know the person, and that kind of gets murky. And it's like you felt you wanted to put somebody's name on a birth certificate. If you do that, then you can't put NA, right? Because all of the official documents have to match. So for me, I put NA. On my birth certificate, I left the father section blank because I used the donor. In some cases with the daycare, because you're going to have a more prolonged and longer relationship, I did have the conversation when I submitted my documents that my children are donor conceived. I used a sperm donor from a sperm bank. So XYZ. In daycare and as you go through school, you will be having this conversation a lot. You're going to get real comfortable with it's the facts, because school will give you a form. Is there anything I need to know about the child's home life? Is there anything I need to know? So you're going to be real comfortable asking these questions. Be upfront. It's a fact. There's no crazy feelings about it, and just be honest with your documentation. So when you go to fill out your passport, you fill out your passport documentation the same way it's on the birth certificate. A lot of times they're going to ask for the documentation. Can I see the birth certificate? And as long as there's no name on the birth certificate, people are just not even going to bat an eye. So when you go for your passport, they'll be like, are both parents here? I'm a solo parent and there's no father listed on my birth certificate. Here's my paperwork.
Well, Pod, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with your girlfriends, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about the topics covered in this episode. So email me at mochasmc@gmail.com. If you found value in the topics covered, consider making a donation using the link in the show notes below. Till next time, Pod. Bye now.